Hey everyone, we are recording this on May 24th, and I'm joined right now by Exyu here in the TGI studios to talk a little bit about some of the recent news. So, earlier this week, we heard that you were not going to be on Dignitas. It's been reported by Sheep Esports that Spica will be coming in, and at the time you tweeted that this was kind of shocking news to you. I guess the first thing I'll ask is, like, a week later, or roughly a week later, how are you holding up?
Definitely a lot better than initially. I think the first night I literally couldn't sleep, so that was really unfortunate. I got told at 1 a.m. literally 10 minutes before I tweeted, I got told, and then I was just in shock, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna post something and try to go to sleep and try to sleep it off and think with a clear head tomorrow, and tweeted, went to bed, and just could not fall asleep. I think it's I was just thinking about, I was literally supposed to move in to the house 3 days after. My girlfriend is going to Vancouver, and I was gonna go with her, but I was like, oh, I'm gonna be on the team, so I'll take you to the airport, and it's near the airport. I was like, yeah, I'll leave the car there and everything, and then everything exploded basically. All my plans, just exploded. So I think that night was just really rough, but I think it's definitely getting better. Talking to more NACL teams and figuring what I'm gonna do out. So,
cool. Yeah. Well, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is just because I think there's been a lot of conversation surrounding this, and I have this year done a lot of coverage on the channel around the plight of North American talent. You know, it's we did an interview with Perry. Folks can go take a look at it, and his decision not to continue to pursue going pro. And now here we are with somebody who was in the LCS. There's a big public outcry. Were you surprised at all by the outcry of people in support of you after all of this? I don't know how much of it you saw.
Yeah, well, recently I've seen it's at 1 million impressions, and that is insane. I really didn't think it would reach that far, especially being on Dig. I really didn't think we had that level of community outreach.
Sure.
I think that tweet probably did more numbers than their entire year's tweets combined.
Sure.
So that was definitely crazy. And when I woke up in the morning, I was just holy shit. Everyone is weighing in. Everyone's saying how they feel. And there was a lot of sympathy, which was really nice. Honestly, it was more sympathy than I thought.
Yeah.
I thought I deserved. I didn't even think I deserved that much sympathy, and also I was surprised that people were that passionate about it.
Yeah.
So that was really nice. Definitely did help a little bit, but yeah.
So obviously, in the character limit of a tweet, you can't fully describe everything that went down. So I think maybe that's a good place to start. Is how did the timeline go? Was it literally 2 weeks before you found out that or 2 weeks before you were told you were going to be good, and then all of a sudden you get this message? Was there a moment earlier where they were giving you a warning on oh, maybe we're talking to Spica? What really went on behind the scenes?
Yeah, complete transparency, it was May 8th was around the time that the rumors of Sven, actually, is that even confirmed?
Okay. I think Sven's been reported by Sheep. I don't think he's on the contract database as we record this.
Okay, well, basically, when the rumors of Sven potentially joining Dignitas started, there was obviously a little bit of concern on my end because we just got rid of Tomo like that.
Yeah.
And I actually didn't say anything to our GM. He actually reached out first and was like, hey, I know what we did with Tomo was shitty.
Yeah.
He was like, but I promise you, we won't do this with you. We're really excited to go to Worlds with you. We're excited to work with you. And this is a roster that we really want to work with. And that was really reassuring because I didn't even reach out first.
Sure.
So to have him reach out first to me and tell me that I was guaranteed, I was like, I'm chilling. Yeah. I must be good. And I talked to the head coach too, because me and him have worked together for years now. On and off, he was at Dig when I first joined, and then he came back. So I was like, I'm good. And he's like, yeah, you're 100% good. I promise you're good.
Yeah.
And I even asked him about Spica. I was like, yo, is that an option? He's like, no, not gonna happen. I was like,
sure.
Okay. I think fast forward a week, that's when things started getting a little messy.
Yeah.
And I would just constantly reach out again and again to the head coach and the GM, and I'd be like, hey, how's it looking? And
okay, so a week later, things had changed. You started to worry that this was not as secure as you thought.
Yeah, even though I had the message.
The 14th or 15th, I think. You're saying a week, okay.
Yeah, even though I had the message saying that I was absolutely secure, I kind of have PTSD from all my esports experiences where I just things can happen up until the very last minute. Nothing is ever secure, yeah. Yeah, and that was part of when I couldn't fall asleep. I was just this has happened so many times where it's everyone's yeah, you're secure, you're secure. Stop being pessimistic, stop worrying, and then they're just wrong.
Right.
So, yeah, about a week before or a week after I got told, I was like, hey, just checking in again, and they're like, we're talking to him. I was like, okay.
So you knew. So it was 2 weeks before. they were like, yeah, you're good. Then 1 week later, they're like, oh, actually, we are having conversations.
Yeah, like we
Spica.
just started conversations, and I was like, how's it looking? And they're like, yeah, you're still like, it's in your favor still.
Yeah.
And then
which makes sense, because I think I had heard around this time that Spica was no longer at FlyQuest, because he was at FlyQuest as like a content creator. And I think around this time he was no longer, so maybe that's what shifted it.
Yeah, and then I think that entire week from when I heard they were talking to Spica to when I found out I was officially kicked, I reached out 3 times to my GM, and then I actually got ghosted for 4 days, and then and then I got dropped at 1 a.m.
Okay.
So
you weren't hearing anything. You weren't hearing anything.
And then I was the thing is, like, I was reaching out to the head coach, and he's very responsive to me, but he was just telling me like, I don't know,
Sure.
and it genuinely felt like he didn't know. To be honest, like, I've known him for years, so I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he genuinely didn't know, because I mean he promised me that he would be the first one to tell me if they decided, just so that I have a little bit more time, and obviously I did not hear from him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in that window I like reached out to Sven and Licorice and Isles, and I was just like, hey, like, you know, how do you guys feel? Like, I want to work with you guys. Like, yeah, I think there's yeah, there's like some other stuff too, but yeah, I was really excited to work with this roster, and yeah, it just blew up. So.
Yeah, and I think since your tweet came out, Sheep Esports also reported that Jensen was supposedly joining this team as well. So it is, you know, I guess if I was Isles, I'd be nervous right now. That it looks like, you know, there's not like an obvious person that jumps to mind as the person that could be there, but it does seem as though 4 of the 5 are seeing turnover. So do you? Because I did a video about this, I released it yesterday. I speculated like, oh, maybe like a player who was coming in on the team was like, oh, I'd like to see Spica join up or anything. Have you gotten any sense of something like that having occurred?
Yeah, I mean, so Licorice didn't really have an opinion.
Okay.
Because he's like, both are fine. I was like ready to work with me because when he joined, I was on the roster, and he's like, Spica's also fine.
Sure.
I think Isles was also like, whatever it takes to win. Obviously, we've worked together, and I think he enjoyed working together. Yeah. But he obviously Spica's a good player too, so he's just like whatever.
Yeah.
I think Sven,
he's like hands in the air type.
Yeah,
player.
I think Sven was excited about the idea of working with Spica, and I was made aware of that. So then I reached out to Sven. Actually, like probably like 4 days before it was official, I reached out to Sven, and we had like a talk, and I was telling him how I felt and like how he was actually one of the players that I was really excited to work with. Yeah. And I was telling him that like, even though I might have not had the best showing the split before, that I really thought that me and Isles would be able to learn a lot from him, and we would be able to work together as a team. And obviously I was really excited about the fact that people speak English on the team now, which is like really exciting. Yeah, so we had that talk, and honestly I think the talk went well, and he was like, yeah, like, you know, like this actually helped a lot. Like I feel more comfortable with the idea of working with you instead of Spica. Yeah. So after I had that talk, I was like, I think I'm good now.
You're like, I think the players are on board.
Like as long as, like, because for me it was like mostly Sven. I was like, if he really doesn't want to work with me, that's fine. Then I understand. You know, like it makes sense. You don't want to have the people that you just signed be unhappy with the roster. Sure. But it seemed like he was on board, so I was like pretty confident that I'd be okay. Yeah. And then, and Dove just didn't get an opinion because I think from very, very early in the off season they already had plans to like try to swap, but the options just weren't available. And now Jensen, obviously after MSI, was available. So yeah.
Okay, so now that leads us to your current situation. I think a lot of folks were very disappointed to not just, there was kind of the conversation around like, oh, it's really shitty the way that Dignitas handled this based off of the tweet that you put out. But I think there was also a lot of people who were like, oh, this is really disappointing because we were excited about these younger players. These, you know, I feel like there's been a lot of young North American talent in the league this year, and a lot of people were excited to see that. And you leaving, I think, was something that a lot of people felt was like a loss for the scene. So I guess the first question is like, what are you looking to do now? Because I remember at the time you tweeted like, oh, you know, I'm still figuring stuff out. I might go to school or something and handle stuff. So where are you at this point in time?
Yeah, so I'm 100% going to play NACL this split. Obviously, right after the incident, I reached out to all the LCS teams that I thought maybe there's a chance they would do something similar, but it was honestly like a lost cause. I think, respectively, a lot of the orgs are like, hey, we're already committed, and you know, I can honor that. So I'm going to play NACL, and then I think NACL and school won't really coincide. time-wise. So I think I'm gonna enroll for school, and then
Yeah, because NACL will probably wrap up by like fall time, right?
yeah. So like maybe there's like 1 week, 2 weeks of overlap where I just like, you know, maybe I ditch my classes and come
Sure.
and like finish this up and then go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I'll probably do part-time because I'm 4 upper div units away from finishing, but I don't think it's a good idea to jump straight back in and do 4 upper divs while playing League. So I'm gonna do 2 and then play League and grind. And like at the end of the year, I plan on going to Korea, doing a boot camp. And then if I don't get offers in spring, I think that'll be
Go finish the degree. And
but I want to go all out and like still give it one more chance, because I feel like if this is the way that my LCS career ends, I feel like I'll be really, really regretful in the future. So I need to make the most of like the rest of this year, basically.
Do you why not continue to do NACL next year if you have the opportunity? Because I think, and I ask because, you know, even recently Sven was on Hotline League. He went on this rant about like how we've just abolished our whole tier 2 ecosystem. It's like in a shambles compared to what it once was. And he was bemoaning the lack of, you know, the upcoming JoJo Pyuns and that type of stuff. So like, what is it that's holding you back from being like, okay, you know, why not? I'll try NACL next year if I can't make it work.
I mean, just like at the end of the day, like I'm still a human being and I'm in my like early 20s, but like the more time I spend just sitting in NACL and kind of like rotting away, that's like years of my life, you know? And I think at a certain point you have to be realistic. And at the end of the year, I'll be 23. And so I think if I like spend another 6 months in spring next year in NACL, where I'm making like 2K a month, it's like, I really feel like my life is just being wasted away. Especially like, obviously I feel really privileged that I have like the option to go back to UC Berkeley and like study computer science and like get a job in that field. I think that's obviously a privilege, and living in California is a privilege, but like these are realistic options for my life trajectory. And like, I feel like it doesn't make sense for me to keep praying for this pipe dream if in the condition that I'm in right now, I can't find a team.
So inevitably on this video or in Reddit threads, assuming enough people are watching it, there will be people that will say, 2K a month to play video games and this guy's complaining? I would play video games a month every month for 10 years, even if I was getting paid only $1,000 a month or whatever. You know, anything that you would say to those folks? Because I find it to be a little goofy, but I do think some people have that mentality, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's 2 ways to have that mentality. Either you are really, really that dedicated to grinding and being competitive, and if you're that case, then it's respectable. And I think that's just a niche case. And to be honest, that's just not me. Like, as much as I love competition, I love the game, I'm not willing to sacrifice my entire life for it. That's just the reality. But the other hand of that is that you have no competitive drive and you really have no idea what it takes to compete, and you have no aspirations, and you just think that like $2,000 a month for the rest of your life is okay, and you just want to play games all day. And like, I think that side is like not as respectable, because I think you just don't understand what it takes to be a pro, if that's your take.
All right. What do you think of the current state of the LCS and the tier 2 system for North American talent? Because when I interviewed Perry, I was kind of like, today, if somebody came up to you, you know, maybe they're like 16 or 17 and they're like, hey, I'm thinking about trying to go pro, should I do it? You know, I asked him what he would say to that person. And I'm curious what you would say, given, how long have you been doing this now?
This is my 4th year of full-time.
Okay.
Well, this is like the middle of my 4th year.
Cool.
So 3.5 full.
So you're 3.5 years into it. You've committed to at least trying to do the full 4 years. So, you know, knowing that you're headed towards the end of the 4th year, uncertain about the 5th year, what would you say to a young North American pro that's like, I want to try to do this?
I think in the current state, like you have to be that guy that I mentioned before, where it's like you are willing to take so many sacrifices because this really is your dream, and like that's all you want in life. I think if there's anything else you want in life, you should really pursue that first. But if this really is the only thing that you want in life, and the only thing that'll fulfill you, then like you should go for it. And honestly, like I feel like the part that sucks the most is that I actually thought this year was like a good year for NA players. Like, you know, TL1, they have 2 NA players. There were a lot of people that came up, like 100 Thieves was doing well. I thought we were doing okay with me and Isles coming up, and like, I don't know, there just felt like there was a lot of hope, and then they kind of just just shot the. I don't even think they fully did. I don't think the league did. I think just maybe my team did. But
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the TL guys are still there and all that stuff, but
Yeah.
I know this. That's kind of within the context of the LCS, but also, what do you think about Tier 2? Because you'll be headed to Tier 2.
Yeah.
That has seen a ton of changes from last year. Last year at this time was when it was announced that the teams were going to be no longer required to have academy teams. A ton of spots disappeared overnight. So I guess, what do you think of sort of the path to pro? If you are a North American talent, can you get into the LCS? What are your chances? That type of thing, you know?
I really don't know. I feel like one thing that was really frustrating to hear in the LCS, and it was just like general sentiment with people in the LCS, is like, oh, the people in Academy who are performing well, they're still bad. They're just beating noobs.
Yeah. Would you say you'd hear this? Is this?
Yeah. This is like something I would commonly hear. Like you would.
Like behind the scenes.
Yeah, when you're like scouting teams, you're like, oh, like this player is good. Look, he's like first place in NACL. And you're like, but he's playing against noobs.
Yeah.
Like that's like the general sentiment you hear. And I think that's like really disappointing, especially because NA has already done that with solo queue, where they're like, oh, solo queue doesn't matter, everyone's a noob.
Yeah.
So now there's no way for you to get into pro just through grinding like on your own. So then there's like, okay, let's go make a team and try to grind that way. And now like the LCS is also discrediting NACL teams.
Right.
I think you'd even see that with Quad in his promotion to FlyQuest. I think a lot of people are concerned about whether he's going to be good enough, and he was obviously demolishing NACL.
Yeah. But they're like, oh, is he good enough? But yeah, look at what he did. Yeah, but that doesn't count.
Yeah, like his stats and stuff, and everyone's like, yeah, but he's beating noobs. And it's like, okay, then who do you want him to play before he can get into LCS for him to be worthy of getting a chance in LCS? Like, he's already playing as the best people outside of LCS, so like, what more do you want from him, I guess?
Yeah. It's like, no. Unless they go to, LPL or LCK Tier 2 and beat those guys, then they're good.
Yeah, then they can come over here and take up a spot.
Yeah. No, I hadn't really thought about that, but it does kind of make sense, because it is a sentiment that you hear a lot where, I'll be talking to Cubby and he'll be excited about some player that's been doing really well. And then you'll hear from other folks in the LCS ecosystem, players or GMs or something like that. It's like, well, yeah, of course they look good there, but like if you bring them up, they're not going to look good or whatever. Yeah. So I do think that makes a lot of sense. Whenever I ask you to kind of reflect and I get your take on what has happened to the LCS ecosystem in the past, 12 to 18 months, right? Because at the beginning of last year, we had 20 teams, or 22 if you want to count like the secondary teams, that were all like LCS affiliated competitive teams, right? You had the LCS teams, then you had all of them had academy rosters, and some of them had like a tier 3, whatever you want to call it, team. Obviously, we're now in a situation where there are 10, right? Because you've got just the 8 LCS teams, only 2 of those are operating in academy. So how much has that impacted your hopes for the future? I don't know if I'm very dramatic whenever I say like, oh God, this sounds really bad. And you're like, actually, it's still fine. Or if that does make you worry.
Well, I think for people who are new to the pipeline, that is like really soul crushing. Yeah. Because the jump from amateur to LCS, that's like almost impossible to make in a year, I would say. Which means that you have to go through NACL. And now, before NACL was like, okay, you're getting a full salary, and you get the experience of being a pro in LA. And I think that's like really exciting, especially for me back then. I was like, okay, like as long as I make it to the first jump, I'll have the chance to learn there and like experience it, and then I can try to make it to the next jump. Yeah. But now the first jump's not there. Like if you make it to NACL, even if you're on a tier 2 team for an LCS org, it's not in person anymore. It's fully remote. I don't know the salaries exactly, but it's definitely not what it used to be. I know that for sure. So it's just like, yeah, it really is crazy that they went from what I thought was a really healthy ecosystem for going pro last year to this, where it's like now you have to pray someone plays really bad and you get a chance. Like, yeah. How much different do you anticipate that system has, like, theoretically, and this is, not me saying this, but in theory, you were in the LCS for this split, and the ecosystem decided, okay, you're not good enough for the LCS. We're going to take this other person who we think is better. We're going to send you back down to tier 2. In the past, we actually had a lot of players that would go back down to tier 2. They'd get better and they'd come back up. Yeah.
do you feel like the NACL today is capable of giving you the improvement you need to like get good enough to be back in the LCS?
I don't think so, honestly. Like, I think there are some strong teams, but the quality is like so much worse. I think since obviously there's like a lot more teams now.
Yeah.
There's so many rosters that are just not even close to LCS caliber.
Sure.
And then I think when you play against bad people, it's easier to like develop bad habits and stuff like that. So I think this year, or for the rest of the year, for me, a big thing will be like making sure that I'm strict on what I expect from myself, regardless of what's happening with everyone else. Cause like,
so it's less about developing in this ecosystem now for you. It's more about avoiding atrophy.
Yeah, like I want to maintain my form so that when next year comes and I have the opportunity, if I get the opportunity to join an LCS team again, I'll be on a level where I can at least compete and then try to improve from that point on.
Yeah.
Because I feel like even when I first joined the LCS this year, like the level is different, you know? And I think obviously fans are like, oh, the LCS sucks, like everyone sucks, but like you guys like don't understand. Like the level is actually insanely different from Academy, and especially for newer players, especially myself, I feel like I learn quickly when I have like the right resources to learn. And I think when I play against better players, that's like a really good resource to learn. So yeah, that's definitely just the best way to improve.
Are you not guilty of what you were just saying though, where you were talking about the players and people in the LCS that are like, oh yeah, Quad was just beating up on these noobs or whatever. Well, you're now saying like, yeah, there's just a bunch of noobs down there, you know?
No, so okay, I agree with that sentiment, but the problem with that sentiment is, and the difference between my opinion and theirs is that if you beat up on the noobs, you deserve a chance to try in the LCS. Like you shouldn't get like you need to beat the noobs. That's like the bare minimum. Right. And then you get the chance to play, but you should be given the chance to play. And I think that's why like having 8 teams sucks. Because when you have 10 teams, there's just more spots for people to like experiment with players and yeah. I think especially for my case, like I think Spica for sure deserves to be in the LCS. So my gripe, I have like zero beef with him in that sense for taking my spot.
Well, it's very unexciting.
Yeah.
We needed you to have beef with him so that next year when you make it back in spring, you and him can play against each other and people can be like, oh, you know, is Exyu going to take him down?
Yeah, I mean, obviously if I make it back and he's still in the league, I will definitely have a chip on my shoulder to try to beat him. But like, as a human, I can't have any problems with him because it's either he plays or I don't. And like, if I were him, I would play too, you know? So it's just that
you don't expect him to be like, listen, I appreciate the offer, but we got to help my boy Exyu.
Yeah, you know, like there's no world where that's a reasonable request from him. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you talked to the Players Association about any of this? Because anytime something like happens like this, where there's a controversial thing around a player, I think a lot of fans come out of the woodwork to be like, what is the Players Association doing about this? So I don't know if you've had a conversation with them at all. I
talked briefly with Philip, but there really wasn't much. I've seen so many comments where they're like, yeah, go sue your org, or like go do like. I can't do any of that because realistically, I did sign this contract, and even if it's like a slightly predatory contract, like when you're a rookie, you don't really have. Like, what are you going to do? You say no, they're going to take someone else. So like, sign the contract. It's like, okay, I'll sign the contract.
So I mean, I don't think people realize, especially between last year and this year, how much the leverage shifted away from players towards orgs, because there's just a lot less. When you cut, you know, 50% of the jobs, if not more, in the space, like. Obviously the people who have the jobs left are going to be able to negotiate, but maybe that is a good thing to hop on though. I see a lot of people that are like, how could this happen? How could he just get dropped? You know, like, could he have left on his own? You know, why is it this one side balance where they can just decide to drop him last minute? I don't know if you have an answer for that. Why is it like that? I have an answer.
Well, esports contracts are purely for the benefit of the org. There's like zero benefit for the players because esports contracts have very small amounts of severance usually, and all the rights are in their favor. That's why you generally see these, like, usually the top tier orgs will always sign 3-year contracts, and you're like, wow, that must mean they believe in them. And it's like, the reality of it is they're gambling on you, and if you're good, then they signed you on a 3-year deal and you're cheap, they get to keep you for 3 years and you're cheap. But if you're bad, they can just drop you whenever they want and find someone else and sign them to a 3-year and then do the same thing. So like, but as a player, you just have to take it unless you're the GOAT. Then you have some leverage. But like, besides that, if you're a rookie coming into the league, like, they give you a piece of paper, you're like, yeah, can I change this? They're like, nope. All right, well, I'll sign it anyways.
Do you think that Riot and the Players Association or whatever should work to change the contracts, because the Riot can dictate what these contracts have to have in them.
Yeah.
To some extent. So do you think that there should be changes to help make sure that people like you aren't just sort of like in the blink of an instant before the start of the summer split getting murked?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I would love for there to be more player protections, but I also understand that it's a business. And from the team side, this is like the reason that they run these teams, right? They have they have the potential to get like someone like Jojo Pyun, where they come up through the system and like they become really good and they sell them off for millions, or whatever amount of money they can make. Sure. So they need the contract in their benefit. And it makes sense. Honestly, I don't know enough about like the business side of the orgs and Riot to like have a full statement, but they should definitely try something to, I don't know. I'm sure they're trying something, but they should maybe try a little harder.
They should maybe try a little harder. I think that's a great way to kind of wrap it up. At the end of this, I do want to give you just a chance to like address any of the folks, because I think a lot of people were excited about you over the course of the spring split, but you still, and I think this is oftentimes just the byproduct of players that are on like the Dignitases or the Shopifys or whatever. You kind of flew under the radar in terms of like fan attention. Mm-hmm. Obviously, as you said, there's been like a pretty big outpouring of support. Is there anything here at the end that you would like to say to any of those folks?
Honestly, thank you guys all for supporting. Like when I woke up and I saw there were so many people who were like outcrying and like just telling me that like I don't deserve this and like I deserve better, that really did mean a lot. And yeah, it definitely sucks. I feel like this year I really got to experience what it was like to be a pro, and it was really, really fun. And there were so many instances where people who I didn't know would come up and be like, oh my God, like I was really excited about your interview. I really liked how you play. Like I like your style. Just like those micro interactions, like to me, that's really what I'm playing for. Like I really love those interactions and just being able to do something that makes people happy. So yeah, I really appreciate everyone who's supporting, and I'm definitely gonna try my best to be back in the LCS next year. So hopefully you guys can wait around long enough and I'll be back for you guys to cheer me on.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this is not our last interview. We get to do something again soon.
Yeah.
But sounds like people will be able to see you play in the NACL. I'm sure you can't announce what team yet, but folks who want to continue to see you can do that. And hopefully we'll see you in the spring. But thank you so much for coming and sitting down with me and talking to me about a lot of this stuff. I think it's easy for fans to often pay attention to the interviews with the big names that have been around for a while, but whenever folks come in and get a chance to hear from folks like you, I think it's also really nice. So for everyone else, you can check out the rest of my coverage of all things LCS right here on my YouTube channel. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you want to support content like this, especially when I don't have a sponsor, there's a great number of ways to do so in the link tree in the description below. Doing so makes it so that I can keep making these videos for you and I don't just disappear into history like so many other people in esports before me.